Hello and welcome. It is FMWC weekend, and I am doing one more case to prepare that I'm going to share with you guys. This one is Leighton's Lenders by Harry Gross, who's also one of the case authors this weekend. Honestly, I'm not sure how much, if anything, this case is going to have to do with Harry's case this weekend because the case description was A, a little vague, and B, seemed to suggest that it's going to be quite out there. But maybe we'll get an insight into the mind of Harry. Uh, Speaking of an insight into the mind of Harry, if you happen to notice the spiffy hats that we're wearing in the thumbnail of this of this video, thought I'd offer a quick explanation, which is I sent Harry a message, say, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing your case. Do you mind if I put your picture in the thumbnail?" He said, "Sure, but since you're doing Leighton's Lender, maybe one of us should be wearing the Professor Leighton hat." And I had no idea that this case is based on a puzzle game called Professor Layton, with various characters whose names appear in the case description. So Harry is wearing a spiffy Professor Layton hat to reflect the fact that he's obviously the I don't know, I guess wise old master in this case, because this is definitely more an operous kind of person's case, although he's not at operous anymore, than I'm used to, and hence I've got the hat of Luke, who is the self-proclaimed apprentice to the professor. Anyway, a little sidebar there. Uh, so um, let's dive on in. So basically, the idea is we've got a big sort of classic project finance model here. You start off with like a full working model, but then you want to make some changes and tweaks to it, and that's what this case is all about. So setting up a wind farm project in a fictional country, da da da. They've set up the model, but now they're handing it off. They want to change some things, yada yada yada. All makes sense. Um, Lots of range names used in here. You don't have to use them in the solution, but you do have to be comfortable navigating with them. So just to give you a sense, uh, you know, here's my here's my minimum debt service coverage ratio. Okay, it's the min of DSCR. So then I have to be able to go over here and say, okay, that's up here, and then that's based on months and period, and that comes from over here, and so on. Anyway, like I said, you just need to be comfortable navigating with names. Just grabbing the name and dropping it into the name box to take you to the name is as good a way as I know. Um, Timing, all cash flows occur at the end of the period, except for the drawdown of debt, injection of equity, which happened at the beginning. Timings are calculated actual over actual. Most of this stuff is already kind of baked into the model. Indexation, the model is set up to have either CPI or RPI, but Emmy had not anticipated a scenario where you might want to have different indices applied to different things, so you might need to adjust for that. Most of the rest of this stuff is just kind of either already in the model or we'll come to it as we go along. So let's just jump to the questions, because this one is all about the questions. So question one, what is the equity NPV in the base case? So this is just, I think, a kind of case of helping you navigate the model, make sure you know where things are. Speaking of which, let's do a little bit of navigating the model. So we've got cash inputs, non-periodic, case inputs, non-periodic and periodic. Periodic one's pretty simple. You've just got a few different timelines, one for depreciation split, one for corporate tax, because I guess the rate is expected to go up, and one for the equity injection. There's just one at the start, but in theory you might have different injections at different dates. So then over here, the non-periodic assumptions, we've got a bunch of different things, but the key thing to highlight is we've got this sort of scenario analysis set up, scenario manager set up, sorry. So you've got 12 different scenarios here. Right now there's just a base case and many spares, and then you have an assumption here, which is a scenario number, and then for each of these, it just pulls in the relevant one. So in other words, if I pick scenario number one, it's pulling in everything from the first column. And so the entire model is built just referencing these, and then you can make any changes you want over here, and then you can switch between scenarios over here. So it's, I don't want to teach you how to do things you already know. It's I guess, a relatively standard way to build a scenario manager, but if it's not something you're used to, it's a pretty handy technique versus versus the alternative of every working thing here having like an index or a choose or a something to find which different version you want. You just have everything that references this page just references the active column, and then you can change that. So that's that. We've got assumptions about timeline, financial close, construction end, months and period. We've got different inflation assumptions and which one is being applied. So as I mentioned, right now there are two different inflation options built in, but only one of them can be activated at a time. Then we've got the generation volume, the percentage increase per year, step up per month, and then the volume split between the quarters because there's some seasonality. Then we've got various kind of price and cost assumptions here. You don't need to worry too much about the details of these because, again, they're all kind of plumbed through the model already, so unless we need to change something, don't worry about it. Proportion of capex eligible for depreciation, interest rate and upfront fees, minimum cash balance, target IRR, and lockup ratios, debt service coverage ratio, and I honestly don't even know what DSCR stands for. I'm sure it's in the case description, but we probably don't need it. So then just a quick kind of spin of, we've got a large working section here. It's kind of nicely grouped up so you can see, these are the various different topics, and then, whichever one you want to look at, you can open it up. It's worth taking a minute just to look at some of the general, you've got your sort of timing assumptions here. You've got counters, so we've got all these gray italics are the names of named ranges. So here we've got period number, quarter. So in other words, the quarter in the year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Period number, just counting from first to last. Then we've got various different flags, or they're called masks here, which interestingly, I hadn't thought about that, but flags, which I think means flags like these, are due to be a topic in Jason's model this weekend. Anyway, so we've got a flag for financial close, in other words, when the investment is made, a flag for the construction period, a flag for the operations period, and a flag for the final period, and then days and period and year. And then we've got indexation, which is just the inflation stuff, and then everything else is just, we'll kind of dive into it as and when we need to. And then there's just some summary over here, summary cash flow, and summary results. And, handily enough, that is where we'll find, or at least one place where we'll find, the equity NPV. So, quick kind of general thing, we've got, how many? We've got 14 questions here. One is just the base case, so we're going to need to add, well, I think we're going to need 14 scenarios. So I'm just going to start off by expanding this a little bit, put in 2 more, carry this across, and I'm just going to name these Q and columns. 5. So I've got one for each question, and for now I'm just going to carry all the assumptions across because this, unless we're told to change things, the default is everything stays the same. So now we're ready to go. So question 2. Sorry, question 1, we gotta actually put in the answer, but let's jump back over here. So I've got the questions on here. Oh yeah, sorry, one other thing I need to do is, I'm actually going to take my scenario number, yank it over here to my Q&A, because then I can do, what do I have, 14 scenarios? So every question is going to involve a different scenario. So rather than kind of just hard coding everything, I'd like to be able to have live links, but I can only do that if I have a data table to calculate the value for the relevant scenario. So put this up here, put it here, and then so first things first, NPV in the base case, and let's just take the number of formats from over here. And we'll just take all of this and do a data table to say what happens if I put in each different scenario. And whoops, let's just copy these formats across. Right, so right now nothing's changing, and that's good. That is what we want. Okay, so now let's look at scenario 2. let me ask you to build a new scenario where RPI is used for revenue and OPEX. What is the equity NPV in this case? Okay, so I think this is just a straight switch here. Which indexation is applied? It starts off as CPI. Now we're going to make it RPI. I'm just going to type in there, and we can quickly, well, I guess we'll see if it's flowing through when we look over here. Recalculate. Okay, sorry. We just want the equity NPV in that case as well. Okay, fine. And we get 18.42, so that's good. And now I guess I should, I'm going to index this, sequence 13, comma, sequence 13. So I'm just basically taking down the main diagonal. So, okay, first two match. So let's move on. Leighton asks you to build a scenario from the base case where quarterly capex is increased by 10% and electricity production is 12 gigawatt hours. What would the equity IRR be in this case? So again, we just have the summary table here as the equity IRR. So we just need to change those assumptions in the case manager, in the scenario manager. So quarterly capex is increased by 10%. So where is the capex assumption? Oh, sorry. I was looking for an increase by 10% each quarter, but that's not what we need. So I'll just do base case times 1.1. I'm just going to copy value paste that. And then production is 12 gigawatt hours. Where is production here? 12. Anything else to change? No. So let's see. That gives us 30.18. Good, that works. What if you combine scenarios from Q2 and Q3? So that's the beauty of the scenario manager. So we do this, and we do this, and we're done. And we're not, oh, sorry, yes, need to do that. And I've got, yes, 31.99, happy days. Okay, now, the lender, Descolet, that's another Leighton character, wants you to calculate an LLCR, loan life coverage ratio, in operations discounting the apportioned senior debt at the apportioned senior debt interest rate. Use the same definition for CFADs as the debt service coverage ratio. What would the minimum LLCR be in the base case? Okay. So, all right, quick pause because someone's calling me. All good. All right. So now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a person who can calculate an LLCR without reading a definition and working it out slowly. So here it is in the thing. The lender defines an LLCR as NPV of future CFADs plus cash balance at the end of the period divided by the senior debt balance at the end of the period. Calculated in each period when principal debt payments are paid except for the senior maturity, i.e. the entire operations period except for the final period. Fine. NPV of future CFADs, cash flow available for debt service, should be discounted using the quarterly cost of debt that is used to calculate interest. So first thing I'm going to do is just check, is the quarterly cost of debt used to calculate interest, senior debt, constant or not constant? Because if it's constant, that's a lot easier. Apportioned interest rate. Oh, it is not constant. Okay, so we're going to have to be a little fiddly here, but that's okay. I know how to be fiddly. So, all right, so let's see. We've got our ratios section that has our CFADs and has the debt service coverage ratio. That seems like the natural place to drop in the LLCR. So let's put it here. So what do we need? NPV of future CFADs, cash balance at the end of period, senior debt balance. Okay, so the most important thing to calculate here is how are we going to discount the future CFADs? And to do that, we're going to have to figure out I guess, a present value factor. So let's just start with a 1 here. And now, where is that interest? It is here. So debt interest is 2%. Seems like an excellent rate, I guess. I guess times have moved on a little since you could get 2% rates, but never mind, that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is just very simple. This divided by 1 plus the interest in this period. And we're going to copy that across. So this is my present value factor. So in other words, the value of $1 of CFADs here, if I discount it back to the 31st of December, is going to be $0.927955. And so I can use that to work out the present value of future CVs, PV of future CFADs. So that is going to be, let's see, we're only interested in LLCR applies. I'll just do a quick flag here. We're interested in operations periods. And we've got these handy masks actually, so let's use them. So we want mask operation, but not mask project end. So LLCR applies. Mask operation minus mask project end. They're trues and falses, but you can just add and subtract them like that. It'll treat trues as ones and falses as zeros. So we're 0 during the construction period, and we're 0 at the end period, and everywhere in between it applies. Okay, so let's move on. PV of future CFADs. I'm going to say if this equals 0, then NA. Otherwise, now it does spell out here, future CFADs means all future periods, not including the current period. So we're going to take a sum product of this, so the PV factors for all the future CFADs and the CFADs themselves, which are up here. And for both of these, I'm going to put $1 on the X, which means that as I copy over, it'll basically shrink the range. It'll lock in one side of it, leave the other side moving, shrinking, which is exactly what I want. So that will give me the present value of those CFADs as of the 31st of December 2022. And then I just want to divide by my current PV factor to get the present value as of that date. I'm like 90% sure that I'm doing this right, but we'll soon find out. Okay, so that's the PV of future CFADs, cash balance at the end of period, and debt balance. And then we can calculate. So cash balance, I'm sure there's an obviously labeled section here, cash cascade, cash balance carried forward, yes. Okay, so take that. And debt balance, senior debt section here, balance carried forward, okay. So then finally, well, almost finally, we'll calculate our LLCR, and that is if this equals 0, then NA. Otherwise, it is PV of future CFADs plus cash balance divided by debt balance. And if I get this right first time, I will feel very good about myself. All right, so the question was, what is the minimum LLCR in the base case? I think I still have the base case active. We'll soon find out. So again, you can't see my status bar, but it's this first one here, 1.3489. Is that? Yeah, amazing. I think that's working. So let's just come over here. We'll say equals min of where are we? Workings, LLCR, yes. Min of that, 1.3489. And that works. Okay. So now, what would the minimum LLCR be if RPI were used for revenue and CPI were used for OPEX? Okay, so now we have to split these two, because right now we've just got one kind of indexation being used. So let's come up here and split them. I guess I'm gonna add another row here, cut that, put it up there, and then revenue and OPEX. Now we've got So for, again, by default, I'm just going to copy these down. So apply the same ones. I'll copy this down. And now this. So I'll just give this a name that is similar, except OPEX at the end. OPEX. Okay, and then we'll come over to that indexation. Sorry, that's periodic inputs. Over here is the indexation section. So then we will again split this in two. So we'll put that up there, and here we'll say revenue and OPEX. And so here we'll say indexation apply OPEX. And we'll, I don't know why there's a different name there, but whatever. Sure, fine, let's give this in. I don't really understand why there's a difference there, so I'm just not going to use that. So again, we'll do the same thing here, cut this up here, revenue, OPEX. So that stays the same, and then this, fine. So just take this. We might even be able to copy it down exactly. Nope, because it's using the named range. Okay, well, I'm going to be lazy. Obviously, if you were trying to build this for forever use, you should do the same thing. But NA is there. That's never good. Oh, yeah, because I didn't lock it in. That's one reason to use named ranges. Okay, so then now I'm just going to use Alt TUD. That's trace dependence. And that will show me where this is pointing, and I can see it's pointing to one place in revenue and one place in OPEX, which is exactly what you want. The one pointing to revenue can stay the same. The one pointing to OPEX needs to change. So that I'm just going to point to here now. Copy across, and that should be everything because it's all coming from here, and we've traced all the dependents. So, well, let's see if we get the answer right, I guess. So what do we have to, LLCR again. So this one, but now we have to, sorry, which for which? If RPI for revenue, CPI for OPEX. And, sorry, we're on what question now? Question 6. RPI for revenue and CPI for OPEX. Do you get it? We got it. Okay, good. All right. Descolet is interested in what happens if the debt service coverage ratios if he lends less money. What would be the minimum HADSCR, whatever that is, if debt drawdowns were 90% of CapEx instead of 100% of CapEx. So first thing, we're interested in the min HADSCR, which is already one of, yes, these minimum HADSCR. So then we just need to, somewhere here, there's going to be an assumption about drawdowns. Oh yeah, I saw it because I changed it earlier for this. So, no, sorry, that's CapEx. Where's the percent? Oh, no, that's proportion eligible for depreciation. All right, hang on. What's the question? Debt drawdowns. Okay, so let's go find the debt drawdowns and see what they're linked to. So we'll go back to our senior debt, CapEx, drawdowns. Well, you can see this is probably not how anyone would actually set up the model unless they were anticipating future change, but they have generously anticipated a future change here. So I guess we just need to set up something in the scenario manager for this, but it looks like there is not anything for it right now. So let's go do that. Wherever my CapEx is here. So I guess it should really be in the debt section. So I'll put it here. Percent of CapEx borrowed. And we'll copy this and copy this. And the base case is 100%. And then call it perk CapEx. I guess I'll be very vaguely diligent and label it here as well. So then we will multiply this times perk CapEx, copy across, and then when I come over here, what question am I on? Question 7. So go to question 7, yellow, and make it 90%. And let's see if that makes it, yes, good, hooray. All right, disclose 90% drawdown scenario. What will be the minimum LLCR if CPI for revenue and RPI for OPEX? Okay, so 90% CPI for revenue, RPI for OPEX. CPI for revenue, and then RPI for OPEX. We're on question 8, and we're not interested in what? Minimum LLCR. Obviously, the way I've laid this out, because so many questions are asking for the same different thing, I'm being very inefficient about it, but it doesn't matter. I've got a setup that works. So LLCR is this guy, I think. And yes, that checks out. Woo! Hooray. Okay. All right. Ooh, here's a big block of text. Given the seasonal nature of the project, oh yeah, so you set up a seasonality reserve to the model. So you save 4% of revenue between April and September, release 45% of its contents in October to December, and release 100% of its contents in January to March, and release everything in the final period. What would the average debt service coverage ratio be if this reserve was added to the base case? Okay, now, this is where it gets technical. Seasonal reserve movements should be included in DSCR CFADs, but not LLCR CFADs. Oh my gosh. Instead, the seasonality reserve balance should be included in the LLCR numerator. Remember to include reserve movements in the cash flow and the cash cascade that is used to calculate dividends. Okay. So this one feels a little intimidating, but let's do it. So I guess we would put it in volume. I don't know. I'm going to put it in a new section because I don't see anywhere that seems like a great fit for it. Obviously, these are the important questions. So seasonality reserve. So what do we need? We need, I guess we need a percent reserved. Let's just see what else happens with the seasonality reserve. Seasonality reserve is used here. So we might want to reserve a different percentage. But aside from that, we're not going to change it. Okay, so we'll say percent reserved. And that's reserved in April and September, Q2/3. Percent paid Q4, or I guess not paid, released, but whatever. Released Q4 and percent released Q1. Those are, I think, all the assumptions we need. So let's just grab this format here. So the base case obviously is nothing gets reserved. Well, it doesn't matter if anything gets released or not, because if you never add any money to it, you will never have anything to release. So that doesn't make any difference, but fine. So then we're on question 9, and we're going to reserve 4%. We're going to release 45%, and then we're going to release 100%. So now, how do we get that into our model? That is the question. So it says it has to feed the cash cascade. Fine. And it has to feed a bit about the LLCR was the more intimidating piece, but we'll figure it out. Okay. So CFADs here. So we need a version of CFADs excluding it and including it, right? Should be included in CFADs for the debt service coverage ratio, but not LLCR. Okay. So I guess the main question is, where should I put it? In revenue? Maybe? Yeah, screw it. Gotta put it somewhere. Let's just put it in revenue. No point in spending a long time mulling little details. So, you know, better yet, let's give it its own section. Seasonality reserve. Okay. So, I guess we want to say draw release. Actually, just say draw percent and release percent. Okay, so here we're going to say choose, and we've got something called quarter, yes. So choose quarter, so if it's Q1, 0, if it's Q2, we're going to use this amount. It's Q3, we're going to do this amount. If it's Q4, 0. Obviously, I'm hard coding the heck out of which quarters we do and don't draw in, but that's why I was reading it carefully to see if it ever changes. If you're building it in a more permanent way, you'd probably want to have, for each quarter, a percent drawn, a percent released, but not doing it that way. So here I'm going to say choose, again, after quarter, and in Q1, we're going to release everything. In Q2, 0, Q3, 0, and in Q4, we're going to release 45%. Okay. I'm just going to switch to this scenario, which is scenario 9, because that'll allow me to just see that this is in fact working. Okay, so I guess opening balance, change, closing balance. Okay, so let's start off with, I guess this is a format for things that are not screwed around with. Whoops, sorry, for 0. So then so here the change is going to be revenue times percent of revenue drawn down minus previous balance times the release percent. And we'll copy it across, and hopefully once we, so here we're not yet operating, here we're operating, but we're in release period. So here's the first place I should see something getting added. I do, hooray, gets added, 45%, then the rest dropped. Okay, good. So that seems to be working. Now the question is, where else do I need to wire it in? So, so I need to get it into cache cascade somewhere. Where? Cache available senior interest fees. Not exactly sure where in here I'm supposed to put it. I'm going to say here. Oops. So seasonality reserve change. So let me get the sign of this right now. That's going to be important. So if I'm reserving, that means, does that mean? Yeah, I guess it means reduction in cache if we're putting it away somewhere. So maybe a negative of this. Just make sure I'm in the same column, column J, yes. And oh yeah, so look at this, a handy little piece of model design you might miss here. There's a very small row here that's shrunken a lot, but that's included in the sum range, which means that when I inserted a new row here, I was about to go and adjust, but it's actually already picked up automatically, so that's quite handy. All right, so that does that. Now I need to see how this factors in down here. So first things first, has this changed? So back to the base case. I think the answer is that it has not. So if you want to see if something changes, one handy way to do it is Alt-ES, Alt-L to paste a link, and then Alt-ES, VS to subtract values. So now this is the live link minus the hard-coded value. So now if I go and change the scenario, these are all still 0, which means the value has not changed. Okay, so it's not hitting CFADs yet. And So I'm going to add another line, two lines, seasonality reserve change. That's going to point to here. Copy across, and then I'll call this CFADs after seasonality reserve change. So there's a little bit less cash flow available for debt service there, a little bit more there. That's all working kind of as expected. So now, so remember to include it in the cash flow. I've done that in the cash cascade. I've done that. Should be included in debt service coverage ratio CFADs. So I'll just call this CFADs underscore seasonality reserve change. Very original name. Underscore SRC. Okay. So now somewhere down here, debt service coverage ratio. Oh yeah, it's actually not using. Wait, what? Cash available for debt service. Okay, this is pointing at CFADs, so now I needed to point at CFADs underscore SRC. Okay. This is like the most unnerving part of a model like this, because it's like, I feel like there could be a lot of other places that this in theory might link into, but I've at least touched everything that is named. So now the question at last is, what would the average debt service coverage ratio be? Oh, wait, no, hang on. I also need to add seasonality reserve balance to the LLCR numerator. So seasonality reserve. And that points back up here somewhere. Senior debt, revenue, seasonality reserve here. And then the calculation, I'm going to add that in as well. Okay, so now, what is the question? One more time. Average debt service coverage ratio. Question 9. And that's again here, average DSCR. And it is not right. Oh dear. Dang. Shoot, I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. I didn't do this. Release everything in the final period. Whoops. Okay. So let's come back up to my seasonality reserve. I bet I still have a reserve at the end, and you're not supposed to. Yes. All right. Okay, well, could have been worse. Okay, so now we're going to say if, I think we had a mask for end of project end, yes. If that, then just close out the whole thing. Otherwise, we can have all the calculations that we had before. Whoops. Oh, yeah, sorry. Just need to put an at on that. Okay, and now we empty it out at the end. I think everything else is working. Let's see. Yes, hooray. Okay. All right. What if the seasonality reserve was active in the scenario where RPI is used for revenue and CPI is used for OPEX? So this stuff is actually pretty easy once you have your model set up the right way. So, sorry, I should have made these yellow as I made all my other changes yellow. So question 10, we're going to do that. And sorry, which way around are we doing it? RPI for revenue. So we'll grab RPI and put it in revenue. And then we want that same thing there. And that checks out. Good. Okay. Next. Ooh, we got more text. It's going to get complicated again. See what his returns would be if repayments were sculpted. In a new scenario based on the base case, determine the equity IRR if repayments were sculpted to a debt service coverage ratio of 1.15. Principal repayment amounts should be adjusted such that the 6-month debt service coverage ratio is 1.15 in all repayment periods except the final one. Right. Okay. Taking into account only the cash flows from the operational period. Yes. Okay. And the question we need to answer is equity IRR, which is this guy. So, on question 11? Yes, okay. got a debt section here. Let's drop it in here. Sculpting, sculpt, sculpt, and target DSCR. So let's see, I'm sure we've got a yes no flag here somewhere that I can copy the formatting. Maybe we don't. All right, never mind. I can copy this for my target DSCR. Get rid of that. And I guess for most of these it'll just be NA. And then here we'll put false. Let's put 0 as the base case. Okay, and then in the scenario we're in, wherever that is, question 11, we're going to do something different. So we are going to sculpt, yes, and we're going to target 0.15. Okay. So now we need to get into the weeds a little bit of how our debt service coverage ratio is calculated so that we can reverse out of it. So come down to our ratios. Debt service coverage ratio, it's calculated here. And we're just comparing our CFADs versus our debt service. Our debt service is coming from up here. That's coming from up here. So here we go. We've got interest and upfront fees coming from the senior debt schedule up here. Hang on, I'm going to start closing out some of these things I'm not using at the moment. Let's collapse everything. Oops, I didn't put a gap in there. Never mind. So we're going to open up senior debt. I'm going to open up ratios. So try that again. Senior interest. Yes, there we go. So interest is pointing to that one. Rolled up fees pointing to that one. So repayments here. So I'm going to work out a sculpted repayment. And that's going to be if. So if we're in the operating period, and if the debt balance, the opening debt balance, is greater than 0, because we're not going to do anything if it's if the debt is already repaid. If those are both true, then what is my debt service coverage ratio? Is my debt, my CFADs divided by my debt service. So I want to figure out one. So it's going to be my. Oh, sorry, I guess I want one more thing here, which is if we are in a sculpt scenario. So if all of those things are true, then my debt service coverage ratio is my CFADs over my debt service. So my debt service is my CFADs over my debt service coverage ratio. So I'm going to take my CFADs, whichever flavor of CFADs gets used, which is this one, gets used for debt service coverage ratio. So that divided by my target ratio, which is 1.15, wherever the heck that's gone. Is it here? Oh, sorry, yeah, it's NA in this case, because I have a different scenario active. Let's open up my formula bar so I can see it a little bigger. So my CFADs, you know what? I'm just going to pause here, and I'm going to rename this tab, case inputs non-periodic. I'm just going to rename it to A, because it's going to make this formula a heck of a lot easier to read. Why is that still saying, oh, yes, should not have left it quite like that, but never mind. Okay, so now, so I've got my CFADs divided by my target ratio, and then I need to subtract off the other pieces of debt service, which are sitting here. So minus that and minus that. And I think if I do this, sorry, otherwise call it NA. And then let's activate this scenario so I can see what's going on. We're in number 11, I think. So let's see. So right away it's suggesting a lower payment, which makes sense because our debt service coverage ratio starts off very low, and a lower payment would give you, put you back more in compliance. So now let's see, I guess, base repayment. I'm just going to take this formula from here. Carry that across. I guess I need this one to have a negative sign as well to match that. So I'm just going to put minus sign on the outside so I don't have to fiddle with each of the, oops, no, I can't put a minus sign on the outside because one of the scenarios is NA as text. So it's going to be minus that, add that back, and add this back. Copy that across. Okay. So then I'm going to say here, yeah, all of that is factored in. So it's going to be if we are in a sculpt scenario, if that, then it's going to be n of this. So in other words, when it's NA, I won't make any payment. Otherwise, this. I'm dropping the sheet name because, well, I'll talk about that another time. There's a good reason to drop the sheet name, so I'll leave it at for now. Oops. So put the format over there, and then, oops, sorry, no, not minus, because we've already got the minus sign reflected down there. And now let's just see. I should have the right target debt service coverage ratio in the first few periods now. And I do, hooray. Okay, so then I'll copy that on across. Now, gotta be careful because now it's gone negative. So, this base scenario is just equal repayments. It's calculated as the outstanding balance divided by the number of payment periods left. So that'll never go negative. So I just need to adjust for this one. And that is going to be the max of that number, which is negative, and minus the opening balance. I guess we can add drawdowns, but drawdowns only happen in the construction period, so that's fine. Max of that and minus that. I copy that across. Doesn't change anything up to there, and then here, yes, here we repay. Good. Okay, so now what was the question? If the principal, what would the equity IRR be? Okay, I think I already put that in actually. Yes, 20.2. Hooray. Okay. What if the repayments were sculpted and RPI were used for revenue and OPEX? So again, this kind of question, because of this setup, is super simple. Here we are. And we just need to point that to that, and it checks out. Good. And okay, so what? Yeah, done that one. So 13. What would the minimum LLCR be if the seasonality reserve were active and reserved 1% of revenue? Repayments were sculpted debt. Okay, well, let's do one thing at a time. Okay, seasonality reserve is active and reserves 1%. So where's my seasonality? Here. It's active and it reserves 1%, so presumably it pays out in the same way as it did before. The repayments were sculpted, presumably to the same target ratio. Debt drawdowns were 90% of CapEx. Where's that? Here. Wait, no, wrong one. That's making CapEx bigger. Where's my percent of CapEx borrowed? Here, thank you. Okay. RPI were used for revenue and OPEX. All right. And the question is what? What would be the minimum LLCR? Okay. So point this at min of, where did I put my LLCR? Down in the ratio section here. div 0. Youch. That's not good. All right, let's go to scenario 13 and see what's going on. Lots of div 0s going on here. Why? Let's trace the error. Oh, right. I understand what's happening. Because you're sculpting, you're paying your debt off quickly. And so, yeah, the senior debt is repaid before the end. So I just need to adjust this formula to say if that is 0 or enough tricks in this one. Let's just do a standard or. If that is 0 or the closing balance is 0, or let's say is less than 10 to the minus 6, then NA, otherwise that. So now, yes, good, that NA is out. And then this hopefully becomes what I need it to be. Yes, 1.4057, hooray. And then the last question. Let's get it from here. If the seasonality reserve is active, active at which version of active? Okay. Repayments are sculpted debt or allowance. Oh, sorry. By optimizing the percentage of revenue that should be reserved in the seasonality reserve, maximize the equity NPV. Okay. So I think that's just a repeat of the question 13 scenario with one thing to tweak. So let's do this. Copy all that across, and then we want to play with this number. Now, this is a slight pain because now I want to do a data table on two variables, and one of them is here and one of them is here. So I'm going to be a little bit naughty and break this a tad. So let's do it this way. So we want scenario 14. We want, what is my NPV is the thing I'm targeting. 2 decimal places is fine. So bonus question, reserve percent. And then let's just do 0% plus 0.1%. We'll look up as far as 9.4. I'm sure that is enough. And now I just need to link this back to there. So all that means is now this is still linking into here, but now I've got both of the variables that the data table is going to depend on the same tab, and that means that I can do a nice little two-dimensional data table. And my column input cell, the thing that varies down the column, is this guy, and my row input cell is this scenario number up here. And that takes a second to calculate, and one simple way to look at this is just do a chart, and you can see the more you reserve, the worse things get. And so I'll be, I guess, a little more formal about it, just do max, but sure enough, that matches. All right, so I think that's it. Try and go for a slightly more abrupt ending than usual. If you're competing this weekend, good luck, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.